Okay, I'm starting the intro to this podcast with an unforeseen addition to the podcast based upon a recent update. I'm going to try and make this short, guys, in terms of the intro. I don't know how many of you know, but there's a new person, a new channel that Dave was very supportive of and that was very supportive of Dave. There's a new channel doing the What's case, and it's a Southern guy. He was saying, "I support Dave 100%. I just love Dave to death." I do like Southern accents because Southern accents are just, they kind of get to the point. But anyway, I'm not a fan of this new channel, so I'm not pretending to be a fan of this new channel. But I find it interesting how he was so loved up with Dave and so much full of praise of Dave, and the other way round. Dave was promoting this guy, this new guy who's doing the What's case. Dave was promoting him on his own channel, but recently they've had a fallout. Now it reminds me of Dave and AD. When Dave first came on the scene, he used AD to get views and to get subs, and there was a lot of love going on and praise, and you know how it goes at the beginning of a situation. There was a lot of flattery going on, and then Dave and AD ended up not liking each other at all. And AD is now still, no, he's no longer on this platform, but he's still crediting himself for finding shadows, which makes no difference to the case whatsoever. And I'm going to talk about this later. Anyway, the long and the short of this story is that this new guy who's covering the Watts case, who was so full of love and respect for Dave, has now had a fallout with him, has now had a fallout with Dave because Dave did something to him. And it seems like this guy has suddenly realized who Dave is. Well, if you'd come to my channel and if you'd spoken to me, I would have told you exactly who Dave was. And I'm not saying this about anybody in particular, but there's people online who have been showing you what Dave is for a very long time. He's not a particularly nice person. The only time Dave remains nice to you is if you agree with everything he says, or you do something for him that benefits him. If you critique him in any way, or if he thinks you're a new person on the block, and if he thinks that you're somehow jumping on his bandwagon and you might get bigger than him, then he's going to turn on you. I could have told you that, new guy. And I'm sure you've seen some of my videos, but you were so full of praise for Dave. And Dave makes up a lot of things. He makes tribute videos to Shanann, and then he says or implies that she did it. The two don't go together. And suddenly this guy has realized, out of the blue, all of a sudden, suddenly this guy has realized that Dave is not particularly kind to the R's or Shanann. And that's only after Dave did what he did to him. That's after Dave did something to him to make him realize what Dave is. Because before that, he was so full of praise for Dave. And there's no question that this new guy has gotten subs and views through Dave. There's no question about it. And Dave doesn't like that. And Dave, Dave ended up turning on him. And this is what Dave is all about. Dave is all about himself, very much like AD. When I criticized Dave over something, this was after setting the record straight and telling the truth. I said, Miss Mensa, which is another channel, was saying that Dave didn't go to America, that Dave hasn't met Ronnie and Cindy. And I put that to bed. I said, yes, he did say he was going to America the first time, and that wasn't true. But he ended up going to America. He's met Ronnie and Cindy. He's friends with Ronnie and Cindy. And I said Dave has a passport, which Miss Mensa was saying Dave didn't have a passport. And I said that. And I became friendly with Dave after that because he saw me as speaking up for him. He saw something that benefited him. But at the end of the day, after that, I criticized Dave about something. And, that's when Dave turned on me and made up a whole bunch of nonsense about me on his channel, claiming that I'm Pakistani. I'm not from Pakistan. My name is not the name that he claims it is. And he claimed that I contacted his ex-partner. I don't even know who she is. I don't know what she looks like. I don't know what her name is. I wouldn't have the first clue in how to contact Dave's partner or anybody in Australia. I don't know anybody in Australia. Never been there. So Dave will make things up about you, like he has done with the Ruseks. He said that Sandra Rusek was involved in what happened. He's made up things about Kelly, who is at the What's Obsession channel, because the same way Kelly came onto Dave's channel and she was new, Dave promoted her, and when Dave saw that Kelly was becoming more popular than her, he turned. This is what Dave is about. This is what he's like. So buckle up. He's also claiming that he's going to get Chris a 35C. Well, it will never happen. That I can tell you right from off the bat. You know, he's not going to like that. But Chris will never, ever get a 35C. Anyway, I just wanted to make a statement about this and get on with talking about Shanann and her lovely time here on Earth. Shine like Shanann and not Bam. I think that's pretty good advice. But in all fairness, and I'm going to be objective and honest, and I'm going to speak about Shanann, and I'm also going to speak about Meghan Markle in this podcast, because this podcast is really about people who are, I would say, heavily disliked. And I wanted to explore the reasons why they might be disliked, and also the reasons why I think that they shouldn't get the heat that they do. And, you know, I do agree with Bam to the extent that just because of what happened doesn't elevate anyone to sainthood. But I've always respected Shanann and never, ever had any desire to resort to some of the things that I see people doing on other channels. There are critique channels of Shanann's that I don't mind. Neek's Peaks. I don't have any problem with Neek's Peaks. I don't agree with everything that's put on that channel, but at the same time, I don't have any problem with Neek's Peaks. I've spoken to Neek's Peaks a few times. Not often. I don't go to the channel very much. But I understand some of the things that she's trying to say. But at the same time, I don't obsess over Shanann and the flaws that she had like some people do. And we all know the players in this game. You know, there's certain channels who just obsess and obsess and obsess over every little flaw Shanann had, cannot say anything good about her, project onto her as to what happened. And we also, a lot of us know that Bam, you know, she really used Shanann to get to the family because of her absolute disdain for them. And, you know, I've got many recordings of Bam where she's basically saying that what happened is Shanann's doing and Shanann's fault. And I disagree. Now, do I think Shanann was a perfect human being without flaws? Of course not, because we're human. She was human, and we're all human, and we're going to make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. I make mistakes every single day, and I've got many, many flaws. But I've never felt the need to go at Shanann like a lot of channels, and a lot of people wanted me to do that and got frustrated with me for not doing that. I just feel that she should be respected regardless of all her flaws. And I want to talk about the mistakes that Shanann made and the big thing, which I think could have made the whole lot of difference. And I'm also going to talk about, you know, why she's not particularly liked. But there's also people who do like her and do remember her and do, I would say, make her into a saint. There are people who do support the Ruseks. You know, they still have a lot of support. But, you know, they're also the people that obviously don't like her. And we've had the critique channels. And I remember Bam was very supportive of the critique channels because she knew that those channels would get to the Ruseks. You know, Bonita, Neek's Peaks, and Meredith's 2 Cents. Bam was supportive initially of all those channels and Justin's channel as well. And the funny thing about Justin's channel, you know, a lot of his videos were going at Shanann and critiquing everything about her. And, he had nothing good to say about Shanann. We also know this is the case with Mensa, who is completely fixated on Shanann. And, Shanann consumes most of what her channel is. I mean, she's just so consumed and I think fixated and obsessed with Shanann in the same way that Bam was obsessed or is obsessed with the Rusex. Personally speaking, I think that the big mistake that Shanann made is not noticing the subtle signs that her husband didn't want to be with her anymore, that he wasn't in love with her anymore. And I think she was trying to hang on because she didn't, she'd had a marriage that didn't work out. And when you're a woman, particularly with children, and you've had a previous marriage that didn't work out, you tend to not want to have that same thing happen again. You want to keep the family unit together. And I think that's what she really wanted. She didn't want to have another marriage that didn't work out behind her. So I think, what I would have done if I had been in her position, I would have left Chris. I would have gone to my family's house, in this case, her parents. I would have taken my children and I would have gone to my parents' house. And in this case, her family's home in North Carolina. And I would have tried to come to or reason with Chris and come to some kind of separation agreement with him, eventually leading to some kind of divorce. And I think that's the mistake that she made, is that she did not. I'm not saying she should have been able to see what was coming in the full capacity. No one would have seen that. No one. But I think what she did is she was trying to appease and she was trying to hold on to him and she was trying to keep the family together. And I think what would have absolutely made the whole world of difference is if she'd left him, gone to stay with her family and spoken to Chris long distance. I think that would have made the whole world of difference, because there were subtle signs, not necessarily big signs, but there were subtle signs that he was withdrawing from her, not communicating with her in the same way, not showing interest in her and the children in the same way, not being affectionate towards her. All of these were signs that he no longer wanted to be in this marriage. And I think her mistake is that she held on and she tried to hold on for as much as she could, and it ultimately led to her undoing. That does not mean that I think she's responsible for what happened. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I think in hindsight, had she understood that he just wasn't interested anymore, had she gone to her family's house, taken her kids with her and negotiated some kind of separation, and just stayed with her family until she got all of that sorted, I think she would still be here today. That's just my personal opinion. The ironic thing about Justin, he was so critical of her, is that, particularly of her as a mother, is that he's no upstanding father either, and I think that's one of the ironies of Justin, and what he did on his channel. He was always acting as if he was superior and better than other people, and yet, with no employment and no steady paycheck, he's not much of a father, but yet here he was criticizing Shanann for not being a great mother. So I think that's one of the ironies of Justin, and one of the things that I would consider to be karma. He sitting there in his car acting as if he's better than other people, when really he was no better than Shanann and no better than anybody else. Anyway, I think, and I'm going to talk about this, Shanann was an attractive woman, but, Bam would say, Bam, in personal conversations with Bam, she had nothing good to say about Shanann. And I think her feelings and her disdain for the Rusex just filtered and carried through to how she felt about Shanann. I would say Shanann was an attractive girl. I personally think Shanann could have done better than Chris Watts. That's just my personal opinion. And she would disagree and say, she thought Shanann was overweight, not attractive, and that Chris could have done better. That was her position, that Chris could have done better. and that all of Shanann's friends weren't attractive either and looked like whales. That was, she had nothing good to say about Shanann. Eventually, it was just, she had nothing good to say about Shanann. I think one of Bam's, one of the downfalls of Bam is that she automatically thinks that being slim or slender automatically means being attractive, and I don't see it that way at all. For me, Shanann was a full-bodied woman, and I actually thought Shanann looked beautiful on her wedding day. Nothing, there's nothing more attractive to me than seeing a woman with a full figure in a dress and embraces that full figure. So I thought Shanann looked absolutely stunning, absolutely beautiful on her wedding day. And I don't agree with anything that Bam said about Shanann in terms of her weight or anything like that. I also think Shanann looked very classy on her wedding day and very elegant. So I don't agree with any of the stuff that Bam was saying about Shanann being overweight and frumpy, and in all of those things I don't agree with. Let me just pause for thought here. Another woman that is very much alive and well, as you know, I don't know if things will change by the time I upload this podcast, but another woman that people really don't like and faces so much criticism, and I don't think it's warranted personally, is Meghan Markle. And a lot of people are not going to agree with me on this. I think that she gets an unfair amount of coverage in terms of the criticism that she gets, and I think that it's very disproportionate when you look at all the stuff in terms of the royal family. When you look at all the things that Andrew has been associated with, he doesn't get anywhere near the coverage that Meghan Markle gets. He doesn't get anywhere near the criticism that Meghan Markle gets. And one of the most leading criticizers, naysayers, detractors of Meghan Markle is Meredith Two Cents, who I think her motivation, I absolutely believe it's to do with Meghan's background. That's my personal opinion. That is my personal opinion. And I was going to do a podcast on this, and I just never got around to it. And I decided that I would just leave it and not mention or say anything about it. But Meredith Two Cents has not had anything. I mean, she criticizes Shanann as well. Hasn't got much good to say about Shanann. And the other person that she likes to rag on is Meghan Markle, and for no good reason. I mean, what has Meghan Markle done? When you compare it to what Andrew has done in the royal family, to me, it doesn't even compare. Now, I'm not saying that Meghan Markle is any kind of saint. I'm not saying that she's flawless. I'm sure she's got flaws and imperfections, just like Shanann did, just like I do, and just like everybody else did. But I do think that she gets a disproportionate amount of just heat coming in her way for no good reason. And I do think when it comes to Meredith Two Cents and her criticism of Meghan Markle, and I mention her because she's very much in the Watts community, because she makes videos of Shanann that are very unflattering. I do believe that it has to do with her background. You know, she's mentioned Meghan Markle having a nose job, and how Meghan Markle had a nose job to appear more Caucasian. I mean, it just absolutely, the things that she says are absolutely motivated by Meghan Markle's background. And it's very obvious in a lot of the comments that she makes about Meghan Markle, in my opinion. It's nothing to do with what Meghan Markle has done, because Meghan Markle has lived a clean, healthy life. She's worked. She was an actress. If you want to say she was a Z movie list actress, that's fine. But there's a lot of people who audition and try to act and try to get onto TV shows that will never make it. So she has achieved something. It might not be the superstardom of Nicole Kidman or Reese Witherspoon or Julia Roberts, but the fact of the matter is she was an employed actress, and Suits is is still a relatively popular show to this day. But there's nothing that Meghan Markle has, can do that doesn't get criticism. The way she holds her husband's hand, the way she walks, the way she held her baby bump, even though she's lived a clean life, worked hard, never been in any kind of trouble, married a royal family member, has lived a clean, healthy, decent life where she's followed all the rules. She's never been in any kind of trouble. She still gets ragged on, and particularly by Meredith Two Cents, who has nothing good to say about her. And I personally believe that there is no reason for it. And I think a lot of the heat that she gets is based on her background and nothing else. That's my personal opinion. And her background in terms of her ethnicity. That's what I'm saying. And it has nothing to do with anything else. But that's just my personal opinion. I have people questioning my accent, saying that it's not my real accent. I must be putting it on because I'm a woman of color. Some things that people say are indirect. Might not be obvious bias or prejudice, but it's beneath the surface. There's another woman within this community who's very supportive of the Ruseks. She's also English. She's got a posh voice. We all know who she is. She comes to my channel from time to time. And sometimes we get on and sometimes we don't. But I liked her previous comments or her more recent comments on my channel, and I approve them. She's got a very posh voice, much posher than I am. And the people that I went to private school with wouldn't have thought that my accent was posh at all, because they were far posher than I am. Far, far, far posher. And, if I wasn't a woman of color, no one would question my accent. So, it might not be a direct implication, but it's an indirect thing. There's bubbling underneath the surface, indirect bias. That's something that I've, been questioned about. I didn't grow up in London. I grew up in Buckinghamshire. I went to an all-girls private school. And apparently I bragged that I went to a private school, even though I've said that I wasn't an academic student and I wasn't the brightest student academically. Apparently I bragged that I went to a private school, but I've never bragged about it. It's simply a fact. But if I wasn't a woman of color, no one would be questioning my accent and no one would be saying that. Anyway, let's get on to other things. So, I was going to upload this podcast on Friday and something told me to wait and do it on Sunday instead. And then I found out that AD has possibly opened up another YouTube channel. Now, I always thought that he would try to make a comeback because he just will not leave it alone. Because AD is all about AD and AD is all about himself. And he's determined to keep going and going. And I think he has an unhealthy fixation with the Watts case and just is continuously searching for credit for doing absolutely nothing but making up stories. Shadows. There is no one in the real realms of the case that would care about AD shadows. They're irrelevant. They make no difference to the case whatsoever. But yet he continues to bang on about how he should get credit for finding them. Like I said, the interaction that I've had with AD has been pleasant. He's always been respectful to me. And I wish him well. At the same time, I find him to be, he's trying to hold on to his past glory days, to his past success. And it's just, I don't know if it's working out for him or not, because I don't know everything about him, but he's a very lonely figure on Rumble. I've also heard that he's opened a TikTok page, or he has got a TikTok channel, and he's saying things that, he's just saying the most bizarre things to get attention. You know, it's very sad that he ever was introduced to this case, because he's tried to give himself credit for something that he should never get credit for. He didn't solve anything. He didn't change anything. He didn't solve or change anything, but constantly tries to get credit for something that he hasn't done. And he's just a very lonely figure on Rumble. But um I have a small concern that he's going to try and muscle his way back onto the platform somehow and get his way again. And I really have a small concern about that. The other things I can say, there's a lot made about Thrive and Shanann's occupation or lack thereof on YouTube, particularly with the critique channels. Should she have done something else? Perhaps, probably. Yes, maybe she should have. But I don't dwell on that. Because at the end of the day, if you were to take a microscope and examine every single person's marriage in all of America, you would find all kinds of issues in every single marriage. Having issues in a marriage, having problems in a marriage, having problems that seem unsurmountable in a marriage is not uncommon. And Chris had other options. There's so many people that get married and live abroad. Chris lived in the same country. He might not have lived in the same state as his family, but he lived in the same country and he had other options, and he chose to do what he wanted to do because of his own selfish need for supply, his own, fueling his own gratification. He had other options. And I just think about Shanann would have been, 40 now or thereabouts. Bella and Cece would have been older. She should really be living her life and, hanging out with her family. The kids should be hanging out with their Uncle Frankie, and their grandparents. That's what should have happened. There was no need for this. There was no need for this whatsoever.